What's going on, everybody? It's Andrew with Natural State Horticare here, and it is May. It's finally here. Temperatures are warming up, and it's time to turn on our irrigation systems. April has been unseasonably dry and warm this year. And I've been pretty conservative. We've gotten more calls and more emails about people wanting to turn on the irrigation systems early, and I know I've been telling everybody to hold off. It's finally time to go ahead and turn those systems on. Early season, just be really conservative. I went out to many clients' properties this year that had called mentioning, perhaps their lawn or landscape was suffering from a lack of water because we had an abnormally dry April. I actually went out with my soil profiler and took samples and showed clients that in fact the soil was actually pretty moist all the way through. Winter we usually get some snow or some decent saturation, and that holds up in the soil because evaporation rates are low and days are shorter, and it's just not summer yet. So usually 90% of the time water is not necessary until we get to May. Well, May's here and it's time to turn those systems on. So I want to go through it with you guys and just do a basic programming check and an overview. Talk to you guys about some ways to make your lives a little bit easier when it comes to irrigation, and just kind of a general overview of how you should start your system up this spring and honestly every spring. Okay, we're here in my shed. Excuse the mess. Let's go over some basic programming advice, how we check our system every year, and just do a general run through and make sure everything is good to go. Okay, first things first. When we're looking at our controller, typically at the beginning of the year, you're going to be in the off position. So that's basically the same on every controller, but that's where you should be. Then as you flip across, you're going to go to your date and time, and you're just going to check on that. That should be fine, especially if you've had your system professionally started up. But you just want to make sure you're on the right day, the right year. All that does matter. Then, as you cycle through, just make sure you're at the correct time. So it is on my watch, correct? So, or 1 minute off. So now that we verified that, we can move on. Now that we've checked our time and date and all that's correct, let's talk about start times. So I always recommend setting a cycle and soak program, and that's going to mean that we take our overall time that we want a zone to run, and we're going to divide that into 3 by setting 3 start times. For example, if I want a zone to run for 30 minutes total, I need to set 3 start times at 10 minutes each that will accumulate to a total of 30 minutes. Cycle and soak is an amazing way to water. It's extremely efficient and avoids all sorts of issues like runoff. But just most of all, it's just the most efficient way to water. So utilizing 3 start times is going to allow you to do that. Just keep that in mind whenever you look at your controller, your times, or make any adjustments, that you remember that you're dividing by 3 anytime you set a start time. All right, so let's see what that looks like. Okay, so don't be intimidated, but on our start time here, we're looking at our first start time on program A. Let's always make sure we're on program A anytime we're doing this. We'll go over the case to be made for B and C or more later and maybe in a separate video. But just for today, we're all program A. The first start time that we're going to set is at 2 a.m. The second one is at 4 a.m. And the third is at 6 a.m. That achieves our cycle and soak programming. It's true, cycle and soak can be a lot. It's fairly complicated, a little bit more advanced. If you're not comfortable setting a cycle and soak, or you don't have one set already, that's perfectly fine. No big deal. Just set a single start time at around 5:30 a.m. Okay, now that we've got our start times all set, we got a cycle and soak or a single start time at 5:30. Let's go on to run times. Okay, so this is a key thing. Before we get into run times, we're actually going to skip over to another section on our controller, and perhaps one of the greatest features of all time, the seasonal adjustment. So I'm just going to rotate over to seasonal adjust really quickly, and you'll see that this is a wholesale way of making universal adjustments to your entire controller. Just really quick, I'm going to say here, so we're A, B, and C for all zones. and it is at 100%. So anytime I'm programming a zone, I want to make sure, and the reason I skipped over the zone programming, I went here first, is just to show you guys, when you're using your seasonal adjustment feature, which you should be, anytime you make adjustments to your times and your zones, make sure that you're at 100%. And I'll show you why really quickly. Here's a quick example. So on my first zone, it is set for 10 minutes. So on my cycle and soak, that means I'm watering for a total of 30 minutes, 10 minutes per cycle. Let's cycle back over here. All right, so let's make an adjustment to our seasonal adjust. Let's go all the way down to 50%. Okay, so we're at 50% on our seasonal adjustment. Now I'm gonna go back to my runtime really quick. So on that runtime that was 10 minutes, we're at 50%, and the smart controller calculates it out for me and goes to 5 minutes. So that's why we want to make sure that we're always at 100% on our seasonal adjustment anytime we make a control adjustment to a zone. So that being said, let's go back to our run times. All right, so run times, you're just going to go through each zone and you're going to divide by 3 when you program each zone because we're cycle and soak. If you did not do a cycle and soak on your run times with only one start time, just remember you go ahead and program the full time. So if it says 10 for me, that's 30 for you, etc. So 10 minutes, zone 1, and you just kind of cycle through. Zone 2, use your arrows to go through, plus or minus to add or subtract time. Guys, I have like 6 zones, and you see that every zone is slightly different from the other. Some zones on mine need more water than others, but we'll go over that here in just a minute about like what I've programmed and why. But just so you know, that's the next step in the process. Okay, so now that we have our date and time is good, start times are set to either cycle or soak or one single start time. Run times have been checked at seasonal adjust at 100%. Now let's go back and check our water days. Okay, so at the start of every year, you're going to want Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. That's a 3-day run. That is more than enough water all the way until, June, July, maybe even August. You'll know your grass will start showing you that it maybe needs one more day of water. And eventually we're going to add a day. Typically I add Sunday, but you guys, depending on your programs and how you're utilizing program B or C, if you are at all, you may make an adjustment in that regard. But 3 days should get you through 80% of the season. It's really easy to make any adjustments to your water days just by using your over arrows. So you just kind of cycle over across your days and you can just plus or minus, and you see how the little icons change. So you can also just say that we're on Monday right now. As it's blinking, it says it's on. If you just hit the plus button, it stays on. Tuesday's off, minus button keeps it off. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. All right, look, Saturday goes off. If I wanted to turn Sunday on, just plus button, just like that. So you can move the arrows if you want, or you can just plus and minus button your way through it. But I'm Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 3 days a week for about 80% of the season. Once that's set, make sure that we take our seasonal adjustment back down to 50 to 60%. You always want to start your season at 50 to 60% of your total run times. So let's get into seasonal adjust and what that is exactly. Here we are. So say we're on our water days or whatever setting we're on, we're just going to turn the dial to seasonal adjustment percentage. You see I'm currently at 100%. I just want to take that down with my little minus button here, and I'm going to leave mine. I'm going to be conservative. I'm going to go 50%. I recommend using seasonal adjust as a way to match the average temperatures outside. So, when we're in the 80s or 90s, that's kind of the percentage you're going to want to be on as a general rule of thumb. Now, guys, if you've been optimized by Natural State Horticare, you're going to get notifications telling you exactly what percentage to be on, so you won't have to worry about this too much. Just as a general rule of thumb, you kind of match your percentage to the average temperatures outside. I kind of base mine on like a 2-week average, so you don't need to make 1,000 adjustments per year. But this is a super convenient way to not have to reprogram your controller to the right amount of water every time the weather changes and go through zone by zone and make tedious adjustments, or overwater and just set it and forget it. Which can be a huge mistake. Okay, so that is seasonal adjustment, which is by far the most important setting on your controller. Now let's talk about another important smart feature that can actually help you guys out a ton, and that's a rain sensor. Okay, back in the shed here, I'm going to shut my controller here just to show you. So this is a rain sensor. This is connected to the controller here, talking to a sensor outside. And there's some controls on this. You know, there's some instructions. It's not that complicated, but any professional that installs these things will be able to set this up for you. That guy in there actually talks to this guy out here. And let's show you a quick shot of what the actual sensor looks like and where it is. There it is. Okay, so this unit here talks to the unit inside. Water goes into the top of the unit and fills this little basin here, and there is a float inside of that basin. The float inside of that basin turns off your controller and mimics soil moisture and evaporation rates and tells your controller when it's time to turn on or turn off. And that way, you're never watering when you don't need to be. Now, you have to keep in mind, yeah, these things are a little finicky. So batteries need to be checked every year. You can actually pour water into the container and check its functionality because it'll tell you on the controller whether it's triggered or not. Just a recommended way to do it. Because these things are finicky, you just want to make sure every season, and that way your controller's not skipping when it shouldn't be or not registering and you think it's off and it's not. They're really convenient, but they do break. The good news is their manufacturer warranties hold up pretty well. They honor it. And so if you do have one that goes bad on you, just replace it. Before we do our final system check, I just want to talk to you guys briefly about how you program zones and the general premise behind that. So if a zone oscillates or rotates back and forth or sprays streams that move, that is a rotational or oscillating head. Those are going to need to be 3 times the length that a misting head runs. So misting heads put out 3 times the amount of water per minute to cover their area that they're covering than an oscillating head. Now, that's not relative to the amount of gallons that any one thing is putting out. That's relative to the area that it's covering. So as you can imagine, an oscillating head is only getting water to any one particular area as it crosses the area, whereas a misting head is putting out its entire amount of water in its area the entire runtime, therefore putting out a lot of water where it covers. So program accordingly. A general rule of thumb when it comes to programming zones is if it's an oscillating or rotating zone, like my backyard here, I'm gonna set that for approximately 30 minutes. There's a ton of factors that determine how long that should be set, like sun exposure, slope, plant type, grass type, whatever it is, things to be considered. But as a general rule of thumb, you can set it to about 30 minutes if it rotates. A landscape bed, for example, with a misting head, mine are set to about 9 minutes, and that's because mine aren't in like a ton of sun, but that's a general rule of thumb. You know, 9 minutes, 10 minutes per run on a cycle and soak, that's going to be 30 minutes. And then on cycle and soak in my beds for a misting zone, I'm going to actually set those for 3 minutes, totaling 9 minutes at the end of 3 cycles. Anyways, that is really, really important. Not to be overlooked. I see way too many times systems that are set and every zone's the exact same. One thing I get asked about all the time is, what if my zones are mixed? What if I have rotating heads and misting heads on the same zone? There's no easy answer. That's not an ideal situation at all. There are some nozzle changes you can make to get closer to a compromise, but it's by no means ideal. So it's likely going to be a push-pull situation where you're going to have to compromise and err on the side of, I guess, too much water or what's most important to you, whether it's grass or ornamentals, because usually that's the mix. But yeah, it's either divide the zone, which is the expensive way, and the ideal way. Sometimes that can sort of be accomplished by changing nozzles, but a lot of times it just means a compromise. So kind of take that for what it is and pick whichever one whichever method suits you. I'm going to show you guys how to program zones. It's as easy as everything else is. So you're going to use your arrows here to just go through your different zones, and whatever you want to set, make sure you're on that station. Then your minutes here, you just plus or minus. Again, making sure you're at 100% on your seasonal adjust so that math doesn't auto-calculate here. And remember, 10 minutes for me, because I have cycle and soak, and my start times is 30 minutes. But just plus or minus to whatever, multiply by 3 if you have cycle and soak. If you don't, just whatever total runtime you want to set. Once you've set your seasonal adjust, your water days, your run times, your start times, you've checked your time and date, you're all done. You're at 50%, you're ready for spring. Now let's turn back to auto. The last smart feature on your controller that I want to mention before I do a system check is actually the Wi-Fi enabled controllers and the Wi-Fi module. If you don't have one, or you don't have a Wi-Fi ready controller, or even if you're not sure, just call an irrigation professional and ask them, is my controller Wi-Fi enabled? You can look it up. The model number is going to be on your controller. It'll tell you. Most modern controllers are Wi-Fi enabled. Does not mean they have a Wi-Fi module. So just kind of check. I'll show you guys a Wi-Fi module real quick, just so you know what to look for. A lot of controllers actually have them built in. That is a Wi-Fi module right there. So little green light means it's working, and I can talk to my controller on my phone. I know it seems like a lot, but the Wi-Fi module will come in incredibly handy in this next step, where we walk through our system and we do a system check. And I know a lot of you have had Natural State Horticare or someone else start your system up, and you think it's all good, I'm ready to go. I agree, this should be absolutely redundant, but I highly recommend doing a system walkthrough. Parts are made of plastic, things get missed, so just do your due diligence and make sure all your T's are crossed and your I's are dotted, and that you're good to go for the season. It doesn't take that much time, especially if you have a Wi-Fi module, to walk around, watch each zone, watch each head rotate and run, and make sure you're set. Okay, that's it, guys. Quick recap. April's too early. Don't really need water. Once May hits, let's go ahead and turn them on. Now's the time. Once you've turned it on, go through your system. Make sure your time and date are correct. Make sure your run times are good. Make sure your start times are set. Cycle and soak if you want. Do your due diligence and make sure before you program or change anything, go to check the seasonal adjust. Make sure you're okay there. It's at 100% before you make any adjustments. Water days should be at 3 days a week. General run times, 30 minutes if it rotates, 9 to 10 minutes if it doesn't. At the very end, go back and put your seasonal adjust back to where it should be, around 50%. So that way you're not overwatering all the way through spring. Match your seasonal adjustment percentages to the approximate weather outside for any 2-week span. So if we're in the 70s, 70%, 80, 80%, etc., that should keep you in the ballpark. Again, if you've been optimized, if we've been out to your system, you shouldn't have to worry too much, because we're going to come out and we're going to actually send you notifications on what percentages to set it on. Once all that's done, do a system check, walk through, make sure. If you're good there, you're going to have a great year. You're going to get off on the right foot, and everything should be in order. So guys, that's it from me today. Hope y'all have a good summer. All right, see y'all next time.